Welcome to First Responder Friday. My name is Conrad Weaver. I'm so glad you decided to join us today for this special broadcast of First Responder Friday podcast. We have a very special guest I'll introduce in just a minute. But first, if you are a fan of this show and this program, I encourage you to support us by going over to our PTSD 911 website and checking out our page for the documentary. Make a tax-deductible contribution to the film. That would be awesome if you can do that to help us out as we produce this documentary of telling the story of first responders who are dealing with the traumas of their job. Well, today we have a very special guest joining us all the way from New Jersey. Brad Waudby is a detective in New Jersey, and he is here to share his story and some of the things he's doing in resiliency training and other things in New Jersey. Brad, welcome to First Responder Friday.
Thank you very much, Conrad, for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell me, how long have you been in law enforcement?
Been in law enforcement approximately 13 years.
Yeah, and so what got you into law enforcement?
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I've always had a fascination with law enforcement and first responders. I always looked up to them. I looked at them as my heroes growing up. And so as a little kid, I would always, my father was friends with all the cops in town. And I became very close with them as well. And I looked up to them. So that's really how it got started. And then as my life progressed, I actually wanted, because my father owns a funeral home, so I actually wanted to become a funeral director. And then that changed. And I said, you know what, let me become a cop again. So and that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your story. What was your early days of policing like, and what all happened with you down the road?
I mean, my story really begins before I was a cop. I am a graduate of the United States Military Academy, class of 2004. And I have a unique story where I was faced with some adversity while I was there. I ended up getting separated from the academy the day before, right around, almost the day before my graduation, my senior year. And that was kind of the first traumatic experience that I've had because I worked so hard for this. It's something that I set my heart and mind on. And, it didn't come to fruition. So I took that very hard. And what I did was I resorted to drinking, resorted to a lot of drinking. And then when when the rest of my class started going deployed overseas and stuff like that, a lot of my classmates didn't come home. And I felt guilty about that, and that hit me pretty hard as well. And again, I would drink more. And so, I said, if I can't go overseas and bring the fight over there, protect this great country over there, let me protect the citizens over here and let me go into law enforcement. So that's what I did. And again, what do cops like to do? They like to drink, right? It's socially acceptable. It's that old school mentality where, after your tour, you go to the bar, have a couple pints, a couple shots, and you kind of just erase what just happened, right? But unfortunately, it's not the case. All you're doing is just putting those memories back deeper into your brain, right? And you're not allowing yourself to process that trauma that you just saw or that you endured, right? So the first couple of years of my law enforcement career, I was doing organized crime investigations. And
heavy duty stuff, right?
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, up here in New Jersey, home of the Sopranos, so it's everywhere. But so I was doing that for a little bit, and then I came to the department where I'm at now, and I started doing some work in the special victims unit, and that's right when I'd say my work started hitting me the most. Was because I would sit there and I would listen to these little children tell me how their, Uncle Johnny or their father, touched them and sexually assaulted them or physically abused them. And it did nothing but just fuel anger and rage inside of me, right? Because you look at these children and say, how can someone hurt an innocent child like this? What did they do to deserve this? And the answer is nothing. Right. So I would start drinking a lot, based on that. And By this time I had gotten married, and that was starting to suffer based upon my drinking. And then I had my firstborn child, and that definitely suffered because I can honestly tell you, I maybe one time I woke up in the middle of the night to take care of my son, right? Because I was just so checked out. And my wife knew it, but she thought that I'd be able to overcome it, right? And she was also too scared and nervous to bring it to my attention for fear of how I might react. And I just kept going. And, then I get into narcotics. And, being the big guy I am, obviously I was a breacher, for the team. And I got on a SWAT team doing the same thing. And all that's full of is just testosterone, right? And anger and aggression, right? All I wanted to do was break things and hurt people on a daily basis, right? And that's not the way to go through life. I was just very, very, very angry. And, I was in narcotics for approximately 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And then, and my drinking had substantially increased. I gotten, and it was basically to the point where I was kicked out of my house by my wife, based upon my drinking. And I was starting to drink every single day. At first it would just be, I would only drink, I'd be a weekend warrior, drink Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Then it'd be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? And then, next thing I know, I'm drinking 7 days a week. Making stops at the local liquor store to pick up a couple pints of Jameson to drink on my way home to work. Way home from work, rather. And my wife gave me an ultimatum. She's like, listen, you got to go to AA, right? I said, all right, I'll go to AA. I remember I went to my first AA meeting, and that was on a Monday evening in late August of 2018. And I walked in there. I said, I'm not like these people. Right. And that's the first mistake right there. Once you start saying that, you are those people.
Kind of denying the truth.
Right? Totally denying the truth. And so, because I wasn't willing to take ownership, I was lying to everyone, including myself. Right. And I thought I had my life under control. Right. But my life was just, total chaos.
Isn't that the lie that alcoholism teaches you?
Oh, totally. You think you have everything under control, but everything is falling apart, right? And usually the last thing especially in our line of work, the last thing to suffer is going to be the job, because you don't want your teammates, your coworkers to see you struggling or to see you as being weak, right? Because you don't want to let them down, right? So, my marriage was falling apart. My personal relationships were falling apart with everyone around me. I was very angry, very short, yelling, screaming, right? But everyone at work was like, oh no, he's fine. I would look angry at work, but they say, oh, that's just Brad being Brad, right? No one knew that I was a full-fledged alcoholic, because I did everything behind the scenes,
because you tried to hide that. So when you came to work, you were sober, you're ready.
Exactly. And then, then there was an incident that I had down in Camden, New Jersey. We were taking down a case, and I ended up getting run over by a vehicle down there. And that also spiked my drinking as well. I got my knee pretty jammed up. Basically just, if I wasn't as tall as I am, I would end up going underneath the car and I would have been dragged. Right. But thank God I was so tall, and he hit me underneath my knees, and I ended up on top of the car, on the hood of the car. But, and then it was that month, basically, that was right around Thanksgiving. And then 2 days after Christmas is when my world crumbled around me. This is in 2018. My wife knew I had been drinking a lot, knew everything I'd been doing. And, I'm acting out in ways that aren't characteristic of me, taking all these chances. And it's because of, the depression I was having, everything in my life was just falling apart. And she walked in from work and said, you know something, Brad, I want a divorce. And my life just collapsed around me because the first thing I thought of was not being able to see my two children anymore. Right. And I remember I got very emotional. I left and I wrote my wife a text saying, oh, you know, I'm sorry. I love you. You're not going to have to deal with me anymore. And I shut my phones off. And I wanted to end it that day. And for some reason, I don't know what it was, divine intervention or whatever. You know, now I look at it as being divine intervention because I believe in that stuff now. But I turned my phone on and I saw these mixed text messages from my wife. And I called her up and she goes, Brad, you know, I can hear her crying. Like, where are you? Where are you? I'm just driving around. She's like, are you all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. She was like, well, the cops are here. The first words out of my mouth were, you just ruined my career. Right. When in fact, she actually saved my life. Because if it wasn't for her calling the cops on me and basically forcing my hand to get the help that I needed, right? Who knows where I'd be right now, right? So I give all the credit in the world, and I thank her every single day for making that phone call. Back then, I was calling every four-letter word in the book because of, you know, I thought that she had just.
Thought you were done.
I thought I was done, absolutely done, you know, and so I go get the help that I needed. And I, you know, ended up, they were going to send me to a rehab facility down in Florida. And my chief, God bless him, he's one of the greatest leaders I've ever served under. I cannot thank him enough for what he's done for me. He got in contact with, between him, my SWAT commander, and another gentleman who, you know, we call him Wally, right? He got me into, he made a phone call to Tom Spooner over at Warriors Heart, right? And got me into the facility at Warriors Heart, right? And I entered that facility on New Year's Day of 2019 and embarked on my 42-day journey there. And while there, I loved it. It got me sober, right? But the problem was I didn't fully let go, and that's on me, right? Because when I got home, you know, I had to go for surgery on my knee from that accident. My wife said, after your surgery, don't come home. Just go to your parents' house, right? And, you know, a week later, my house was on the market. My house was sold in July, right? And I was living in a one-bedroom apartment, right, by July. And you want to talk about anger and resentment? Oh, I had it, right? I was just so angry, depressed, everything. And then again, you know, started acting out in ways that weren't characteristic of me. You know, wasn't drinking because I knew that if I drank, my life would seriously be over, right? And I didn't want to take that risk. So I started doing, you know, other stupid shit. And eventually that caught up to me. And that caught up to me in December of 2019 when a phone call was made to my command staff, and they brought me in. And my chief asked me, he goes, you know, come in with my chief, my deputy chief, and my SWAT commander, and the sergeant from IA. And they're like, chief goes, hey, Brad, how you doing? You know, all good, sir. Right? He goes, don't lie to me. How the f*** are you doing? And I just broke down. And I was just so depressed. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't doing anything that made myself happy. I wasn't engaging in the things that I normally would be engaging in, right? I wasn't going to the gym as much. I wasn't doing, you know, hanging out outside as much because I'm an outdoors guy. I love going outdoors, you know. And so they basically said, we're going to get you all squared away. We're going to get you right, because we don't want you like this. We need to, you know, the fixed Brad back. We need the old Brad back, you know. So I I got in touch with a gentleman by the name of Bill Mazer, who works for Acadia Health, and went out to Sierra Tucson out in Arizona. and they have a red, white, and blue program out there for cops and first responders and military veterans. And worked with Doc Reynolds out there, Dr. Bill Reynolds, who's a Navy doc, right? And for lack of a better term, excuse my language, he unfucked my brain. Did a lot of EMDR therapy out there because I really wasn't, because now, because I was going to a lot of therapists also at the time, right, too. But therapy only works if you're honest, right? And I wasn't honest, right? I was not honest with these therapists, right? And I was lying to them. I was telling them what they wanted to hear, right? I wasn't honest to my therapist. I wasn't honest to my sponsor, right, in AA, right? I wasn't honest to myself, right? I was still lying, right? And then...
So you were kind of gaming the system?
I wouldn't say gaming the system, but I was definitely... I was just telling people what they wanted to hear, right? Because I was so concerned about getting back to work, because during this time I was basically in an administrative job, right? And I'm not an administrative guy. I'm a street guy. I want to get out there and I want to work, right? I didn't go to the police academy to do all this stuff just to, sit behind a desk and file papers, right? I want to put in work. So all I wanted to do was get back into an active squad, right, and get back in the SWAT team. That's all I cared about, right? See, once I started doing that, right, that's when I started losing sight of everything else that was important in my life, okay? Because I started putting those things in front of my sobriety and in front of my mental health, in front of all that other stuff, and I lost those things, right? So I remember it was kind of funny. The day when this all happened, right, when I got called in my commander's office, I have a very close friend of mine that I work with, who's very, very religious and very, very spiritual, right? And as a matter of fact, when I came back from rehab from Texas, he called me up and said, "Hey, Brad, can I pray? Can I pray for you?" And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, "Dude, I've never had anyone ask me that before." Well, of course, and I started crying because I never had someone do that to me, right, or do that for me. And we prayed, and we've always had a special connection. And then when everything happened to me in December, right, he reached out to me again, right? And this is what's pretty freaky, right? So I get stopped at a meeting, at an AA meeting, because I share and I break down in the meeting. And this big gentleman goes to me and goes, "Son, you need to become a prisoner." Right? "What are you talking about?" He's like, you know all about prisoners, right? You're a cop. You tell them when to eat, when to sleep, when to shower, when to work out, when to do everything in their lives, okay? Because you control them, right? You got to become a prisoner to God. And I was like, wow, that made sense. He goes, "God's going to tell you when to do everything in your life, right?" He goes, "You need to talk." And he said the guy's name, but my coworker's name. He goes, "You need to go talk to him," right? So I call him up. I'm like, "Dude, you'll never guess what happened." He's like, "Bro, it's so weird because this past weekend I was praying for you, right? And God came to me and said that if he gives his life up to me, I'll give him a life beyond his wildest dreams, and it'll involve something helping out with cops and veterans." Right. And at that point in time, I didn't know what that meant. Right. So, fast forward, I go out to Sierra Tucson, and I do the EMDR therapy, which is great. I don't know if you know what that's all about. Yeah. Right. So that really got into the all the trauma that was deep buried in my brain. Right. And I remember there was some very, very, very emotional sessions that I had. And then I did what was called TMS therapy out there as well, right? I don't know if you know what that is.
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure exactly what it is.
So basically, for what layman's terms is they basically take an MRI brain, MRI magnet, right? Put it up against your brain, and it pulsates magnetic waves across your brain, right? Which clears new neural pathways for your brain waves to travel through, rather than traveling through the broken ones or the damaged ones, right? Travels through these new ones, okay? And that was a game changer for me, right? I mean, I was walking around the happiest person in the world. And I still am to this day, right? Because it changed the way my brain functions now, right? And so when I got back from the from Sierra Tucson, I went to, I had to do my, intensive outpatient, right, for 6 to 8 weeks. And during this whole time, I've now picked up, I'm going to AA meetings every day, working out every day, right? Talking to therapists 3 times a week. Okay. Doing what I got to do to get myself right. Right. And once this is all over, right, it was about the beginning of March. I had called into my chief's office, and he's like, "All right, Brad, I heard a lot of good things about you. Got a good report from the doctor, right? I'm going to put you back on full duty, right? And by the way, Monday you're reporting to South Jersey to go become a Master Resiliency Trainer for the state of New Jersey." I'm like, "What?" Right? So I was like, "This is great." Right. This is awesome. Right. So I go down to this program down there, and I meet some amazing people down there. Right. And this is basically the New Jersey Resiliency Program is basically modeled off of the FBI program. Right. And the Air Force program. And it's awesome. And basically what we do is, as a Master Resiliency Trainer, what I do is I teach the curriculum. I teach resiliency to the individual department resiliency officers, and they go ahead and teach it to their respective departments. But God forbid some officer is in crisis or something like that, they can reach out to me. They can reach out to Cop to Cop, which is a crisis hotline, right, that we have here in New Jersey, and we'll address that situation, and we'll get that individual the help they need, right? Because, as you know, I think today the number was 144 cops who committed suicide as of year to date today. Yeah. And that's one is too many, right? I think they could all be preventable. Right. It's just a matter of reaching out and raising our hands. And sometimes that's the hardest problem, right? Because our egos get in the way.
Right.
You know?
What would have happened if you hadn't had a chief and command staff who really cared?
I probably would be working my father's funeral home, to be honest with you, because they believed in me. They knew who I was. They knew the type of person I am. Right. And they cared. Right. They honestly cared. Right. And they're not just administrators, they're leaders. Right. They're not just sitting there checking the boxes for stuff. They're actually leading by example, to have a vested interest in each and every single person underneath them. Right. And they look out for them. Okay. I mean, if you make a mistake and you mess up and you do something wrong, you're going to have to pay the piper, right? But they're going to make it into rather than a punishment, into a learning experience. Okay. And that's what needs to happen. This whole talk of resiliency and changing the culture in the first responder realm has to come from the top, right? Because if I'm a cop in a department where the chief does not believe in this resiliency program or believe in, mental health and the importance of it and stuff like that, why would I want to go raise my hand? Because I know that I'm going to get blackballed and I'm going to get fired. Why would I want to do that? Right. So it's imperative that the chiefs, right, and the leadership buy into this, right? Because it's a new way of policing, right? Because if we can work on cops' mental health and first responders' mental health, right, it will reduce the amount of incidents that could be avoided, right? Because there's cops out there that just that are stressed to the max, right? And their minds can only take so much. Right. And when they reach that breaking point, they're going to be like a pressure cooker and they're going to explode. Right. And you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. Right. Because bad things can happen.
On the evening news.
Exactly. It ends up on every major news channel. Okay. And we right now in law enforcement do not need that.
Right.
Right. So why not nip this in the butt now while we can? Right. And explain to cops rather, that listen, it's okay to raise your hand. It's okay not to be okay, right? And that's what I'm doing, right? Because people look at me. I'm 6'5", like 310 pounds, tatted up, shaved head, beard, right? They're gonna look at me like nothing's gonna bother him, Oh, I was broken. I was broken. So if I could raise my hand and say, listen, I needed help, right? That means everyone in front of me can say that same thing.
What would you say to those people who are often the city managers who manage the budget and say, you know what, we can't afford to add one more program to the police work?
No, it needs to happen. It needs to happen because you are playing not only with your with the civilian lives in the respective cities, all right, but you're playing with the officers' lives and their families' lives and stuff like that, because this all affects everyone, right? It affects everyone.
And wouldn't you say that it's probably less expensive to prevent situations than it is to fix it on the back end?
1,000%. It's preventative medicine. That's all it is. If if everyone can go out there, right, and either talk to a therapist or just take some of these techniques, stress reduction techniques that I've learned, right, and that we're teaching through the resiliency program, right, such as prayer, such as meditation, journal writing, okay, controlled breathing, stuff like that. Your stress drops tremendously. Ever since I started implementing this at the beginning of the year, right, my stress has dropped tremendously, right? And I will say this, that they say 2020 was everyone's worst year, right, because of COVID and all the civil unrest in the city and in the country, rather. For me, right, I was able to take full advantage of that because it didn't bother me, because it was like, oh my God, like the world's like falling apart. I'm like, well, I was used to this for the past 38 years because my life was all falling apart, right? My life was one big disaster. Okay. So it didn't faze me as much, right? I knew how to prepare for it, right? And the other thing it gave me time, because the gyms were closed, right? Everything was closed, right? And we were on a modified work schedule. Okay. I went, one thing I mentioned earlier, that I like the outdoors. I went back out to the outdoors, right? I went fly fishing. I took a fly fishing, and that's what I would do every single day. And you want to talk about a grounding exercise, right? Oh my God. Go stand in the middle of the river for a couple hours and just, cast your fly rod a couple times. It's great.
Something really special about being outside. This past week,
Yes.
my wife and I went up to Ricketts Glen State Park in Pennsylvania, and it's a beautiful, beautiful park. It has like 20 some waterfalls, and it was a pretty stressful. I mean, really, it wasn't stressful, but it was intense hike because it was raining, it was wet, and it was slippery. But man, the thing it does to your brain is to be outside, to hear the gentle water, as it's falling,
exactly,
to walk through the leaves, to see the nature around us was just so peaceful.
Yeah.
And even though there was, a bunch of people out there because, it's this beautiful place, it was still an amazing experience. And I think more and more people need to get outside.
Yes.
To bring some that natural world into our brains.
Yes.
I think it does something to help rewire the brain.
No, 1,000%, because, we're all addicted to, our cell phones. Yeah. Right. And video games and stuff like that. Like, I got two young boys, ages 5 and 3. They don't know what a video game is. They don't know what a video game console is. Right. They're constantly outside every single day. Right. Awesome. I got them running around with me, dressed up in all camo, like they're going hunting. Right. I mean, they love to be outside from 6 o'clock in the morning until time is for dinner. They're outside. All right. And they love it. But you're right. It does there is something about being outside that just calms you down.
Some of the things that you talked about earlier about breathing and prayer and meditation and journaling, I'm hearing this over and over again from people like you who are training others in resiliency and in wellness. And it's a recurring theme that I think that needs to be emphasized, more broadly to all of our first responder communities, that these things work. I mean, you're evidence of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not, trust me, I'm not I'm not sitting there hitting yoga poses and stuff while I'm meditating. I'm just sitting in a chair, right? And in a quiet room, and I'm just alone with my thoughts. And that's all I'm doing. And what it's given me the opportunity to do is process that trauma that I may have seen that day, right? And by journaling, it gives me the opportunity to write down my thoughts, right? So that, you know what, it may be 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, I can go back and look at that and be like, wow, what was I thinking today on November 13th? What was I thinking today? Right. The act of putting thoughts down on paper itself, right? It's freeing, right? And that's why so many people like write books and are authors and stuff like that. And that's what I started doing. Also, I started, writing articles for magazines, right? And one of the ones I just wrote was it was basically based around why it's so hard for us to raise our hand and ask for help. Okay. Because when I was 17 years old, I raised my right hand and was sworn in as a cadet at West Point. Right. Actually as a cadet candidate at West Point Prep School down in Fort Monmouth. And I was raised my hand to serve and protect the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay, willing to give my life for this country. Right, and I've done that numerous times throughout my career. Okay, if I'm raising my hand to give my life for a total stranger, why is it so hard for me to raise my hand to save my own life? Right, and the answer is this: it's ego. Right, because we don't want to be perceived as being weak. Right. And the biggest thing that I had to do in my recovery was check my ego at the door.
Would you say it takes more brawn and strength and willpower to raise your hand and say, hey, I need help than it does to ignore it?
Yes. And the reason is this, because you're actually in touch with your feelings at that point in time. All right. It's okay to be emotional, right? It's okay to feel. We're human. Okay. We're not robots. Right. As contrary to what they may teach you in the police academy, to act like robots, you're not. Okay. You have to think for your own. You have to think for yourself. And that's what I did. I actually recently spoke to a class of recruits, and I told them these things, right? Because they're going to be the first ones who are going to go through this resiliency program. Okay. And it really needs to change at the recruit level. Right? It needs to be indoctrinated to them as recruits to say, listen, the days of you sucking it up, driving on, right, are over. Okay. If you don't feel right, talk to someone. All right. Because if you don't, not only are you doing yourself an injustice, but you're, affecting those around you. Okay. You're going to be the weakest link. And that was one of my biggest things. And that's what I felt so guilty about, is when I was going through all this stuff in 2018, I was still operating on the SWAT team. Okay. I was operating on like 60%. My brain was not there. Okay. But I was able to do the job. But let me tell you something, it wasn't there. I wasn't as sharp as I should have been. Okay. And I owe an apology to my teammates for that. I need to make amends to them for that, because that wasn't me, so we need to, especially because, as cops, right, every day is our Super Bowl, right? Because we don't know when the big game might kick off, right? So we have to prepare for every day as our Super Bowl. And we have to have a clear mind every single day.
And you're going out and dealing with the public's worst day, right?
Yes.
So every call that you go on is very likely that person's worst day.
Yes.
So if you're not healthy, if you're not at the point where you're have taken care of your mind and your body and your spirit and everything, you can't give it all to help that person through their worst day.
Yes, agreed. And that's why what I like to do is, before I get in my car, I drive to my office. Before I get into my office, I'll put my car in park and I'll sit there. And what I'll do is I'll do this breathing technique, right? It's called 4-7-8 breathing. And what I'll do is I'll breathe deep in through my nose. Everything's going in through your nose. Breathe deep from my chest, from my diaphragm for 4 seconds. hold for 7 seconds, right? Exhale for 8 seconds, right? Do that 6 times, right? Breathe it in through your nose, out through your nose, right? And you will feel your heart rate drop. You will feel your body just become calmer, right? And that's how I start my day off every single day when I go into work, right? And if throughout the day I feel myself getting a little stressed, right, I'll go into an empty office room or something like that, and I'll just do that, just to regulate myself and bring myself back down. Right? It's self-awareness, because you need to know when you're getting out of control or getting out of whack. Right? You need to bring yourself back to center.
If you could go back to that first day at the academy, what would you say to yourself?
Which academy? The police academy?
The police academy.
What I say to myself, that was an interesting day, first off, because first day of the police academy, what would I say? I would say a lot of the stuff, it's good to know, right? But a lot of the stuff is you're hardly ever going to need it in your career. There's some things that, depending upon your job, I should say, but the one thing I wish they had was the resiliency training, right? Because I say it like this: in New Jersey, okay, we have to be proficient in our firearms twice a year. Okay, we have to qualify twice a year, and some officers go through their whole career without even drawing their gun. Okay, and we teach firearms, we teach tactics, we teach all that stuff, which is great. Trust me, I'm back in the SWAT team. I'm a SWAT guy, I'm a tactics guy. I love that stuff. Big firearms guy, right? But all that stuff is useless if the mechanism isn't clear. Okay, so they need to teach those things as well, right? In order for the rest of the other things to work properly or work even better. All right. And it's something that I learned, unfortunately, on the job, but I learned that, because, I had my own incidents and stuff like that, but, better late than never. Right. I still got many years left in my career that I can.
You were in the middle of the mess.
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware of perhaps other people around you who were kind of in the same boat?
No, I wasn't even aware of anyone else around me, whether it be in the same boat or not. Right. I had the blinders on. I was just worried about Brad and only Brad. I was selfish. I was self-centered. I didn't give a shit about anyone else or even, notice anyone else. Right. It was all about me.
When did you, in the various treatment things that you went through, when did you get to the point where you realized, man, I've really come a long way. I've messed up a lot of things. And when did you have clarity on the path forward?
When did I have clarity on the path forward? It was this. It was June 1st, 2020, right? And it was because I did something that I normally would have never done. And that is, especially given the circumstances that I was in, my wife and my 2 kids were living almost an hour away. They were renting a house. I was living on my own. I went and bought them a house. I never, ever would have done that. I never would have done that because of the way my brain functioned prior to that. I was full of anger and resentment. Okay. Now it's more like, what can I do for you to help you out? Whereas before it was, what can you do for me? Right. And when I got my when I finally closed on a house, my wife said something to me. She goes, thank you. I go, thank you for what? Thank you for buying a house. Thank you for signing for the house. I know it was difficult for you. I go, no, it wasn't. All I'm doing is the next right thing. Right. And a husband takes care of his wife and takes care of his children, takes care of his family. And that's what I'm doing. I wouldn't have thought like that a year ago. A year ago would have still been, go pound salt, honestly. And my outlook is totally different. Now I have a tremendous amount of gratitude in my life. I thank God every single day for waking up. Whereas before I did not want to wake up. I am thankful for having a healthy family, right? Especially in today's climate with COVID and everything else that's going on. I'm very thankful and grateful that they're alive and well and healthy. I'm thankful for having a job because let me tell you something, about a year ago, it was in question of whether or not I was still going to have a job and be able to provide for my family. And the last one is I'm grateful that I'm sober today. And that's due to the grace of God, right? Because he could take that from me at any minute, right? And all I got to do, and I realize that as long as I keep doing his will and not imposing my will onto people, right? Things are a heck of a lot easier. Life is much simpler, right? It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's not stressful, right? It's basically you're going with the flow, right? Worry about the things that you can control. Worry about your own actions, your own reactions, and the rest is easy.
So what would you say to that person, that cop, that maybe a young cop, maybe a veteran, who is where you were a year ago? What should their first step be? Maybe they don't have a leader who cares or who understands.
Well, I mean, if they have, especially if they're in New Jersey, heck, they can reach out to me, right? Because I'm able to go work around the entire state and help out guys, right? I'll get them in the right direction, right program. But reach out to someone, whether it be, I wouldn't, a friend, okay, anyone, right? There's numerous 1-800 hotlines that you can contact, right? To talk to someone, cop the cop, cop line, stuff like that, Blue Help. There's a bunch of them that you reach out to, and they're going to point you in the right direction, right? You're not just going to be another number calling. They're going to treat you like a brother or a sister because that's what you are to them, right? Because they don't want to see you, they don't want to see you go down the wrong path, right? And there's a lot of other cops just like me who want to do the same thing, who want to help out others, right? Because I don't want people to have to go through what I went through, right? I don't want them to have to deal with all the bullshit and, losing everything, right? And having to rebuild again. But you know what? I'm very, very thankful and very grateful that I went through it because I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
So if you could stand in front of the chiefs of America and you could talk to them, what would you say to them?
I would say that the days of sucking it up and driving on, pulling yourself up out of bootstraps, there's a time and place for that, right? But you need to be understanding. You need to be compassionate. You need to gain empathy, right, for these officers, because it's going to do you and your organization no good if you don't go out and support them, because all it's going to do is create a climate full of fear, right? And because guys aren't going to want to raise their hand, guys and girls aren't going to want to raise their hand for fear of losing their job. So what you need to do is if you talk openly about it, right? because the more we talk about things, okay, the less taboo it becomes, right? The more it's addressed, right? And that's why podcasts like this, and there's multiple podcasts that are doing the same thing. Is they're just talking about it to get the word out there, and that's what needs to happen. The chiefs need to make it known that they are behind this, right? To reassure their subordinates, say, "Listen, we got your back. God forbid something happens," right? Because at the end of the day, us as law enforcement, we are investments. Our organizations have invested a lot of money in us, right? And I look at it like this. I look at it as if we are high performance sports cars. Okay. They pay a lot of money for us to be where we're at. Okay. With the uniforms, the training, on the job training, everything else, right? Equipment. So if you're owning that car and you blow your transmission, okay, are you going to throw that car away? No, you're going to take it to the garage. You're going to take it to the mechanic. And you're going to get it fixed. You're going to drop a new transmission in it. You're going to test drive it. You're going to make sure it drives well, and you're going to return it to the owner, right? As good as new, okay? It's the same thing with us. If you realize that one of your subordinates is going through some problems, okay, stop. Take them to the mechanic. Take them to the therapist. Send them to rehab. Get them the programs they need in order so that they can be the best version of themselves that they can be, right? Because if they're not, they're only doing a disservice to themselves and to your organization.
And if you do the maintenance on that car,
exactly, change the oil. Yeah, exactly.
It's much less expensive. You won't
exactly
have those problems that you're going to have.
Exactly. That preventative maintenance.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Brad, it's been a real pleasure talking to you and hearing your story. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for helping to end the stigma. I'm wearing the shirt today. Let's end the stigma of raising your hand and asking for help. Let's make it make it the norm for first responders to say, you know what, I need some help. I need to go check myself into rehab, or I need to, get the help that I need. Let's make that the norm so that we can have healthy people serving our communities and keeping our communities healthy and safe. And I want to say thank you for sharing. Thank you for the work you're doing over in New Jersey. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
If they want to reach out, you got my contact info. They can reach out to you and just forward them on to me.
Sure.
Right. And
you can just send me an email if you want, and I'll put this email address up on the screen here. Send an email to conrad@conjostudios.com, and I'll make sure Brad gets the information, and you can reach out through that way. Brad, thank you for coming on to First Responder Friday today. Thank you for your service to our country and to your communities, and for the work you're doing. And congratulations on just your sobriety and moving forward with your life in this way.
Thank you, Conrad. I appreciate it. Also, thank you very much for what you're doing. You're bringing awareness to this problem in law enforcement, the first responder community, and you're doing a great job of it. And thank you very much for your support and continued support of all first responders out there.
Absolutely. My pleasure.